sang about peace, preached love. He was the voice of an entire generation yearning for change. But behind the round glasses, the pacifist quotes, and the performance protests with Yoko Ono, there was another John Lennon. A man in constant conflict with the world, and, above all, with himself. Born during the war in 1940, Lennon never knew stability. His father abandoned him as a child. His mother, though affectionate, lived on the fringes of the family. It was his Aunt Mimi who raised him, a strict, distant figure who shaped Lennon into someone both rebellious and deeply needy. Years later, when he finally reconnected with his mother, she was struck and killed by an off-duty police officer, right in front of the house where he lived. The pain was immediate, but the impact lasted a lifetime. That moment lit a fire inside Lennon, the quiet rage of someone who had learned to lose too early. With the Beatles, Lennon conquered the world. He became a modern-day god, adored by millions, a symbol of creativity and rebellion. But while he smiled for the cameras, his demons grew stronger. He was known for his sharp wit and biting humor, but offstage many remember his emotional instability, his angry outbursts, the cruel way he treated colleagues, journalists, and even his own family. His relationship with his first wife, Cynthia, quickly went from youthful romance to obsessive jealousy. There were episodes of abuse, manipulation, and disregard. Years later, Lennon would admit in an interview, "I used to be cruel to my woman. I beat her. I fought men. That's why I'm always on about peace." Few cultural icons have the courage to confess such truths. But Lennon always seemed to live between two extremes, self-awareness and chaos. His oldest son, Julian, was virtually ignored during childhood. When asked about his father, he answered coldly, "He loved Yoko and Sean. But I was always the mistake." To Julian, Lennon wasn't the man the world worshipped. He was just an absence. While promoting peace from hotel beds, Lennon was also sinking into alcohol and drugs. The excesses started with amphetamines in Hamburg, then LSD and finally heroin, a dark plunge into the depths of himself. In recording sessions he sometimes couldn't even sing. Other times he arrived explosive, ready to tear everything apart. His fellow Beatles witnessed the transformation and many admitted, in whispers, that Lennon could be brilliant, but unbearable. In 1970, after the band's breakup, Lennon stripped away any illusions and released a raw, brutal solo album that shocked even his most loyal fans. In it, he sang, "God is a concept by which we measure our pain." And he added bluntly, "I don't believe in Beatles." That wasn't just a musical rupture, it was a scream from someone desperate to break free from his own image. The world wanted a prophet. Lennon tried to become one, but not without struggle. His scars were always visible, though often hidden beneath slogans, public performances, and uncomfortable smiles. John Lennon was loved by millions, but silently battled a darkness that never truly left him. His story, before it was about peace, was about survival. And maybe that's why his death years later didn't feel like an ending, but more like an abrupt interruption, the forced closure of a cycle that had never truly found peace. He was one of the most famous men on the planet. Every step, every word, every appearance made headlines. And then, suddenly, he disappeared. For nearly 5 years, between 1975 and 1980, John Lennon lived reclusively in a luxurious apartment at the Dakota Building in New York City. To the public he was resting, enjoying fatherhood. But behind the silence there was a mystery. The man who once challenged presidents, who stirred crowds with protest songs, now spent his days locked away between four walls, distanced from friends, the press, and music. What really happened to John Lennon during his lost years? To understand the exile, one must look at the figure who accompanied him with near ritual intensity, Yoko Ono. The couple always provoked extreme reactions. To some, they were revolutionary soulmates. To others, Yoko was a toxic influence, a suffocating presence who pulled Lennon away from everything and everyone, including himself. In the early 1970s, Lennon seemed completely submissive to his partner. It was Yoko who introduced him to conceptual art, to the world of experimentation, to spiritual practices, and even to methods of emotional control and hypnosis. There are reports, never confirmed, that Lennon took part in regression sessions led by Yoko and her mentors, some of which involved psychedelic substances meant to liberate the ego. Some say Lennon began to fear his own mind, and some say he feared Yoko. Once, when asked why he was rarely seen in public without her, Lennon simply replied, "I can't." When separated from Yoko for a brief time, during the so-called Lost Weekend, when he had a short relationship with May Pang, John seemed to smile again, to write music, to reconnect with friends. But soon after, Yoko called him back. And he obeyed. But there's something even stranger to this story. During his seclusion, Lennon didn't just walk away from music, he seemed to lose his very identity. Close friends like former producer Phil Spector said Lennon would sometimes go days without speaking, just staring out the window, paranoid about cameras, hidden microphones, or someone coming after him. There were rumors he believed he was being watched, not just by fans but by more powerful forces. Yoko, for her part, exercised total control over the household, the finances, and who was allowed contact with Lennon. Assistants were frequently fired for trivial reasons. Some claimed that inside the Dakota, everything revolved around maintaining this spiritual balance, as if the truth had to be kept outside. And then, as if out of nowhere, John reappeared in 1980 with a new album, Double Fantasy. His voice sounded lighter. But his eyes still carried a haunting sadness. It wasn't a triumphant return. It was a farewell in disguise. A month later he was dead. And the world began to ask the questions he could never answer again. Who was really in control of John Lennon? Why did he spend years in silence, hidden, invisible? And what did he discover in that silence? Amid protests, drugs, spiritual gurus, and songs about love and redemption, there was a man who had begun to trouble the system. A man with a dangerous gift. He could move crowds with a single sentence. And because of that, he was watched. In the early 1970s, John Lennon had become more than just a former Beatle. He was now a political figure. He marched against the Vietnam War, supported the Black Panthers, gave a voice to anonymous activists, and wrote songs like Give Peace a Chance and Working Class Hero, songs that didn't just ask for peace, they demanded disruption. It was the height of Nixon-era paranoia. America was burning with protests and distrust. And among all the agitators, Lennon seemed to be the most dangerous, because he had the world's microphone. What many didn't know is that while Lennon walked the streets of New York as a free man, he was already under surveillance. Declassified documents now show that the FBI opened a secret file on him, over 300 pages long. File name, Lennon John Winston, Security Matter, Subversive Activities. This wasn't fiction. The US government feared Lennon might rally young people to boycott the 1972 election. Nixon wanted him deported. Agents followed him, tapped his phones, searched his apartment, photographed his every move. At times, Lennon would tell friends, "They're following me." Many thought it was paranoia, until the documents proved he was right. But why would a singer, an artist, pose such a threat to the empire? The answer lies in his rare combination of charisma, fame, and awareness. Lennon wasn't just a rebel with a guitar. He was a British citizen with access to millions of disillusioned young Americans. His friendships with activists like Jerry Rubin, Abby Hoffman, and Bobby Seale placed him within a network the FBI labeled radical elements with cultural influence. An invisible threat, but a real one. There are indications that the COINTELPRO program, a covert FBI operation to destabilize so-called subversive figures, tried to discredit him. Leaks, legal harassment, media manipulation. The goal was clear: silence Lennon without drawing attention. Deportation was the cleanest route. But Lennon fought back. With the help of lawyers and public pressure, he managed to stay in the US. Still, he knew he was being hunted. He once said, "You don't have to be crazy to believe you're being followed, when you really are." In the midst of this personal Cold War, Lennon began to retreat. He stopped speaking publicly, left political movements behind, traded the stage for the walls of the Dakota. Not out of apathy, but from exhaustion, from fear. Or maybe, from something he never got the chance to tell. And then, when he finally decided to step back into the light, when he recorded a new album, smiled for the cameras, and told the world he was returning, the silence came again. This time for good. It's hard not to ask, why then of all times? Who feared the return of Lennon's voice? And most of all, why are so many of the FBI's files on him still redacted to this day? It was December 8, 1980. Cold, dry, a typical New York winter night. John Lennon had spent the day giving interviews and finalizing recordings for what was meant to be his big return to the stage. For the first time in years, he seemed happy. He seemed ready. At 10:50 p.m., John and Yoko returned to the Dakota building. As they approached the entrance, a man stepped out of the shadows. He called John's name, pulled out a gun, and fired 5 shots. 4 bullets struck Lennon in the back. He fell. He bled. He died minutes later in the back seat of a police car. The shooter was identified as Mark Chapman, a former seminary student with a blank stare and a quiet voice. He remained at the scene, calmly reading The Catcher in the Rye as he waited to be arrested. End of story? Not for everyone. Because the details don't add up. Chapman didn't flee. He didn't resist. He claimed he heard a voice telling him to do it. Called Lennon a phony and said he killed the ex-Beatle for glory. But his psychological profile didn't match that of a fame-seeking killer. He had no plan for what came next. He didn't give interviews. He didn't want publicity. He simply shut down. Some behavioral experts say Chapman displayed signs of classic dissociative programming, the kind of mental pattern that, according to obscure theories, could be induced through psychological manipulation. In other words, Chapman may have been a pawn, a tool. Many point to the book he was holding, The Catcher in the Rye, the same book another infamous shooter, John Hinckley Jr., would reportedly be carrying months later when he attempted to assassinate President Reagan. Coincidence? Or code? Others find it strange how quickly the media sealed the narrative. No one dug deeper into Chapman's background. No one asked who he had met with in the days leading up to the shooting. No official documentary explored the case's blind spots. Everything seemed neatly wrapped up, as if the story had been ready before it even happened. And then there was the Dakota. The building where Lennon died was already surrounded by rumors. It had been used as the setting for Rosemary's Baby, a film about a woman impregnated by the devil through an occult ritual. Some say the Dakota was frequented by esoteric figures, occultists, and even members of New York's elite circles. After Lennon's death, Yoko remained there, in total silence. Another question never answered. Where were the security guards that night? Why didn't Lennon, who had known for years that he was a target, have protection? And why, on that night, instead of calling an ambulance, did the police place him in the back of a patrol car, even though they knew he was critically wounded? None of this was investigated. None of it questioned. To this day, Mark David Chapman remains in prison. He doesn't speak. He doesn't seek freedom. He simply serves his sentence as if carrying a burden far greater than a crime. As if keeping silent were part of the deal. And meanwhile, the questions remain. Was John Lennon truly killed by a deranged fan? Or was there something, or someone, determined to silence, once and for all, the one voice still brave enough to speak the truth? Maybe the answer lies in a still redacted page of the FBI files. Maybe it's in what was never said that night. Or maybe, the truth died with him.